Let's talk about this local council thing that I was mentioning. And there is an overall issue with, and I've got to say, and it's going to be an unpopular view, is that I do think that there needs to be a bit more money given to local councils to actually perform some of the basic functions. I think some local councils don't do themselves a favour by, say, $71,000 for the cashier at the local pool, or a whole bunch of other things they choose to spend their money on. But, Nicolle, how have we got to a point where, yes, it's a council in Sydney, yes, it's probably, some factional this, that and the other where somebody's having a go at somebody else, but it's $1,000 a metre or $1 million a kilometre to put footpaths down?
I know, and private businesses would go out of business if these were the sorts of costs they were paying to get things done, Paul. I mean, goodness me, what have they gold-plated the footpath? You've really got to ask questions about how this council is running its basic infrastructure. And also, I would be asking questions about what else are they wasting money on if they can't get the basics like this right. Ratepayers in this particular council should be asking some hard questions of the people that they have elected if this is how they are administering basic local infrastructure. Correct.
Alas, that council has gone deep teal, super teal, so they perhaps wouldn't ever respond, but we'll try and find out something. Linda, I want to get... It's very tempting to have a 10-minute conversation about whether or not the person who's the cashier at the pool deserves $71,000, but whatever. But the overall issue, though, right, and I've always been very sympathetic to this, and we've always talked about it, that I understand that, like everything costs more, but what do we need to do to make sure that councils literally don't go broke providing the things that we come to expect? And conversely, how do we make sure that just because it's the government paying, that this doesn't get wildly out of hand? Because I think this is wildly out of hand.
Look, of course, local governments are public bodies. They have a very important responsibility to be responsible with all public money, to be transparent about their procurement processes, to do the right thing and to ensure that they're doing the best job for the public at the cheapest price, and they're being transparent and responsible with public money. So, of course, there's no argument about that. I think what is important to recognise, however, is that across Australia's 537 local governments, most of them are really under very significant financial pressure. I've got councillors in, the remotest parts of Central Australia that are earning, many of them, under $15,000 a year to be a councillor, to go to meetings, to manage all the decisions, and their staff are getting paid more than them, as they should, but they're getting very little to do a really important job, basically to be the government of the area, because, let's face it, there's no state, territory or federal government presence in these areas. And more generally, local governments are under pressure. We know, more than ever before, they're much more reliant on federal government funding. Under the Keating government, they were getting about 1% of Commonwealth taxation revenue. That's now down to half that for federal assistance grants. Local governments run about a third of the nation's infrastructure on 4% of the nation's tax take. So let's just talk about what local governments are doing with that money. We're very efficient when you look at the big numbers, and so we're doing a lot with a little. More from the state, more from the feds, rather than the ratepayer themselves. But so that's why I'm sympathetic to it. It's not just because Linda's my mate, it's because, if you do think about it, and as you travel as widely as we do for the show, local government is the most obvious form of government. But if you're in this financial scenario, if you're in a place that doesn't have a lot of money, it ends up being stuck in that. Can I also just say, look, it's not going to surprise you to say I'm not across every budget line item for the Northern Beaches Council or the 536 other local governments. But, here's how a council budget works. They've got a line item for footpaths that includes cycleways, that includes paving in marine areas, that includes detailed engineering work that has to be done. I'm sure somebody in Parliament somewhere's taken an estimate and blown this up, and it's a great story. But in reality, the council's got to do complex works in this marine environment with really significant erosion and a lot of, weather events that are causing very expensive public works to be needed. But okay. So it's a great headline, but when you look into the details, there's a lot more to it.